welcome to another stop on our Soccer Down Here virtual brewery tour. Look, hopefully we're going to be able to make this a real brewery tour by the end of the year, and maybe, fingers crossed, knocking on all the wood we can find, I think we're going to be okay to do that. One of our stops in December is going to be up in Marietta, Glover Park Brewery, and Hank DuPre joins us right now to talk about Glover Park. Hank, thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
Tell our listeners a little bit about the history. How did things come together for you guys?
I tell you what, it's kind of, I'll tell the short version. It's back in 2017, a good old friend of mine, Sam Rambo, and I were talking about trying to do something on the square. And he called me up one day and said, let's open a brewery on the square. And I thought he was nuts at the time. I was just looking to do something kind of small scale, a little bar or pub or something like that. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The laws were changing at the time, and it allowed us to sell directly to the public. SB 85 was the name of the bill that was passed. So I said, yeah, this might make some sense. It'll be a huge investment, but let's look into it. And we found the building that we're in right now. It was for lease at the time, and we made a deal on it. So it took us about a year to get going, but we opened in September of 2018 to great fanfare. A lot of people were very interested and, fascinated by the idea of having a brewery right there on the square. But Sam and I both believe, both being longtime Mariettans, and our families have been here for generations, that Marietta was behind. I mean, we needed something like that. We felt we did, and thankfully the community seems to feel the same way. We've got a really good customer base.
The building is just beautiful. I mean, how hard was it to find the right setting for this?
I think we got lucky, Jason, to be honest. We needed a lot of space, and there are just not a lot of places on or around the square that have that much space. This happened to be the old Marietta Lighting building from the mid-'60s through 2008 or so. Before that, it was built as the original Sears and Roebuck in Marietta in the mid-'30s. Yeah, about the same time that the Strand was built is when this building was built. So it had been a couple of things since it was Marietta Lighting. After Marietta Lighting went out of business, a church, and I think it was a young actors playhouse, but it had the square footage that we needed. And luckily, unluckily for Marietta Lighting, but luckily for us, the building burned to the ground back in 2001, and it was rebuilt by Marietta Lighting from the inside. So it's a nice steel and concrete structure inside the four original walls of the old Sears building. So that gave us the sound structure that we needed to put in a brewery and the event space upstairs. So it's a totally modernized inside, but it's totally old on the outside, which is kind of cool.
So opening, up just a couple of years ago, getting people in, starting to build that connection, how hard has it been for you in 2020 with the coronavirus breaking out just as you're going into a busy spring?
Yeah, I'm not going to bemoan our situation any more than anybody else's. We've all had to suffer the same thing. We had just really gotten going after a year and a half or so in business, and we're starting to hit stride and, being able to compare year over year and figure out what worked last year and try to do better with it this year. And then boom, this thing hits, right? So it just sidetracked us in a huge way. So for the last for I guess about a month and a half, since mid-March through the end of April, we shut it down. We essentially had to, and for safety and practical reasons. And we just sold to-go beers right out of our tap room for people that would drop in. That's all we were able to do. So it's been, let's call it a big, huge bump in the road. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody could have prepared for this. So we're just doing our best now, starting early May, to claw back out of this. We've reopened. We've got, the great news is we have a lot of space. I guess it's the good news, bad news. The reason we have so much space is we have no events booked in our event venue until late June because everything had to cancel or postpone. So we've got all this space to use, and we can spread out and be safe and keep tables 6 feet apart and do social distancing and still open the brewery. So that's what we've done since the first week in May. And we've, like I said, we're clawing back and people are coming out. I think they're very cooped up and anxious to go out and have a good time and try to act like, there's some sense of normalcy in life. And we're happy to be able to accommodate them in a safe fashion.
I've been figuring this stuff out on the fly. I'm sure you have too. When we start talking about protocols and what it looks like for soccer to come back, whether that's at a professional level, at a youth level, and all the challenges and differences and all the costs that come along with it. How hard is that process of just figuring out what safe is for you guys right now?
Yeah, it's kind of a good thing we were closed for a month and a half, because we did have to sit back and think. Everybody's learning something new every day, I think, about the virus, and we learn something new every day about procedures that will keep us safe. But we listened very carefully to all the CDC guidelines and the guidelines that came out from the governor for restaurants. And of course, bars aren't open yet. We're a brewery, so we're in a totally different category altogether. But no, I think, again, given the footprint that we have in our location, it wasn't that difficult for us to establish a space for people to gather and stay safe. So I guess, again, we're just lucky in that regard that we are a brewery. We have a lot of space. We have the event venue upstairs. We have definitely, to answer your question directly about what's different, we've definitely spent and focused more on the outside, because I think people just feel safer outside. Luckily, this is the time of the year when the weather's pretty good and people can go outside and be comfortable. In fact, feel great. And we've expanded our outside seating areas to accommodate.
It's been interesting as I've talked to soccer coaches and administrators during this. They've had some chances to look at things, that they normally wouldn't. They've had the chance to study a little bit or think about how they can reimagine themselves. Has this kind of forced break given you some opportunities to find some new ways to interact with the community?
Hey, that's a great question. It absolutely has. And you're right. We actually we brainstormed together over the last month, and we're calling it Glover Park 2.0. We're trying to figure out how we're going to come out of the chute and make some improvements based on giving us, a lot of time to sit here and think. When you're going full business, full bore, you don't really have time to think. We've had time to think about our successes and not so successes over the past year, and how we can improve on that, and how we can, modify our facility to make it more comfortable. I think that outside seating stuff, I think that's here to stay. And we knew we needed to improve. So, we're adding more shaded areas. We're moving some tables around and creating spaces up near the street. We're just doing different things like that. We're trying to accommodate our guests from a music perspective better. So more equipment, different styles of music. We haven't started our live music acts back again, but certainly we're giving that a fresh look as well.
Yeah, it's a challenge because you have some time, but you don't want to lose what is your identity right now. And for people who are new to your brewery, what's your signature? How would you describe it to somebody who's coming out new? What's your signature beer, for example?
Oh man, it's so different for different people. Everybody has a different palate. I think that, one of our strong contenders is our IPA and our IPAs, and our brewmaster is Kevin McNerney. He actually was one of the co-founders of Sweetwater Brewing Company. So he's been around the block, and he's been brewing for 25, 26 years. He had left Sweetwater about 10 years ago and did a stint with 5 Seasons, is doing a consulting gig for a couple of years. That's how we got to know him. He was actually our consultant to get our brewery off the ground, saw what a great thing was going on with us and with the community, and he actually bought in as a partner. So he's one of Sam Rambo, me, and Kevin McNerney are now partners in the business. And I know he loves to make IPAs. That's his go-to. And we have very strong contenders on that front. We've got one called Off the Tracks, which is a West Coast IPA, which happens to be my favorite as well. And we have one called Sun Beach, which is I guess you'd call it a tropical IPA. It's got more citrusy. It's loaded with citra hops, and that's what makes it taste very citrusy and sharp and refreshing. So those are very strong contenders for us. We've got one. I told Kevin when he started with us that we're not really a craft beer town yet. Marietta, they're still most of a Budweiser, Bud Light type town, so we got to ease them into the craft beer scene. So he said, I've got just what we need there, and he created one that we call Base Camp, which is it's just a lager with no offensive hop bitterness to it for people that aren't into hops, that aren't into strong beer like that. So that's actually, when you look back on the first 12 months of our business, that was actually our number one seller. So we proved to be right on that front, that's what people would start out with. And now, I guess, in a very exciting new development for us, but we're a little bit behind in terms of the other breweries. We have created a seltzer line, and we've got a couple that we can't keep them in stock because they go so fast every time we release them. But soon we'll have a good quantity of the seltzers, and they're gluten-free. They're not made using any grain at all. It's just cane sugar, basically, fermented and flavored by, we've got a couple flavors right now. We've got blueberry lemon, and we've got a peach-flavored seltzer called Peach Into the Choir, which, again, we just can't keep it. Every time we release it, we run out of it within a day and a half.
As I'm sitting here drinking a peach Red Bull, that sounds pretty good. And I'm not a seltzer guy at all.
Yeah, I'm not either, but that's okay. I mean, we're doing everything we can to appeal to the widest audience that we can. We have a lot of guys that come out with their wives or girlfriends, and they tell us as they're leaving, we stay here longer, but my wife or my girlfriend, she just doesn't like beer. And up to this point, all we had to offer as a non-beer alternative was our apple cider, hard cider, which is very good, but not everybody's cup of tea either. So the seltzers are, I think, a game changer for us in terms of appealing to that wider audience and giving the ladies typically that don't like beer something else to offer.
So you mentioned Marietta, Budweiser, Bud Light kind of town. How has Atlanta United games, when you guys have shown them over the previous couple of years, how have those gone over for you?
It's building. So we, from the beginning, had wanted to establish ourselves as the family-friendly, dog-friendly, kind of laid-back place to hang out with your fellow members of your community. And specifically, we've got 7 TVs, and we want to make sure that any significant sporting event that's going on is on the TV. So we early on figured out this Marietta is definitely an Atlanta United town, and it's building. So the more people know that we're focused on it, that we're going to have the games on, the more crowds are coming, the bigger the crowds are coming out to see Atlanta United games. And of course, now we've got to be careful about trying to draw crowds. We got to draw crowds responsibly and socially distanced, et cetera. But yeah, Atlanta United is a big part of what we have to offer in terms of the Atlanta sports scene and having people come out together to watch games.
I'm hoping by the time we have some Atlanta United games for you to show that maybe that distancing won't be quite as distant, and we'll get to that point here very soon. None of us really know. We've got it on paper right now thanks to Scott Flood and the Flood Project that we're going to come up and see you guys in December and talk soccer and have some people out and have some beers. And, I mean, it's looking like we might still be in Atlanta United season in December, so we might have a lot to talk about when we come up to see you.
That would be very exciting, and I hope you're right. And I would love to see a resurgence of both soccer and all sports and our business around the fall. And I hope that happens. And we definitely are excited about hosting you guys. We're a soccer town. We really are. And not just Atlanta United, but all the youth sports leagues. We've got COV FC, we've got NASA. We've got a bunch of soccer families that are just very interested in the game.
I can't wait for all of it to come back at all levels, and I can't wait for you to get more people out. It's very cool that you're open and you've got the space to be able to do this and do it in a safe way. For people who are looking for somewhere to go, how can they follow Glover Park and how can they find out more info?
Yeah, we've got, obviously we have a website, gloverparkbrewery.com, and on there you'll see everything that's coming up in terms of special events, which we don't have a lot of right now, music acts, which will hopefully start back up in June. You can also see what food trucks will be out serving food on any given day for the tap room. So that's one place to go. We certainly have a Facebook site as well, which you can see what's going on, and also Instagram. So all three of those are ways that you can stay in touch with us. And if you want, you can sign up for our newsletter, which we send. I'd like to say regularly, but I'd call it sporadically. But we send out a newsletter to our people that sign up for the newsletter, and we can keep people informed about what's going on at Glover Park.
Excellent. Well, we'll keep people informed as well, and we'll be seeing you in December. We're crossing all the fingers we can. I think by December, we'll be able to come out and talk soccer and have a couple beers, and maybe some people can have some seltzers and some ciders as well, and have a good time. Hank, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it, and thanks for telling everybody about Glover Park.
Gosh, thank you, Jason. I appreciate you having me. We certainly look forward to it as well.